Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Barbara Scofidio, and I'm the editor of Prevue magazine and your moderator for this webinar featuring Sharon Fisher, founder of Play with a Purpose. Since 1992, Sharon has brought groups of 8 to 20,000 together as participants rather than just attendees, using interactive games and participation-rich activities. I can vouch for that because she recently did so at one of Prevue's visionary summits in Chicago. And you'll learn all about the kinds of things she brings to the table today. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. During the presentation, feel free to enter your questions in the question box. We will gather them together and hold a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Don't worry if you missed something. The webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a link via email to access the recording at your leisure. We encourage you to stay on for the entire webinar, and one lucky winner will be selected to win a $100 gift card. We will announce the name right at the end of the webinar. And finally, as an attendee today and for all of Prevue's webinars, you are eligible for 1 credit hour toward your CMP from the Events Industry Council. So I won't take up any more of your time. I'd like to introduce Sharon Fisher.
Hey, Barbara. Hey, everybody out there. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is going to be a really fun presentation. We're going to do some really interactive things. For those of you who have been to my real live sessions, you know that I learned a long time ago that the less I talk, the better my reviews are. So we're going to experiment a little bit in this webinar formula to get you guys really engaged and participating and kind of living some of the learning as we go through. I would like to encourage you as we do this to ask questions at any point. We will do a Q&A at the end, but Barbara's going to do some moderating for me so I can kind of stay on track with the webinar, and she'll feed in some questions as we go. I don't want you to lose them or forget them, and I want them to kind of be relevant to what we're talking about at the time. So, so feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. So today we're talking about creating engaging experiences, and we are we're going to ask you to do that right now. What I want you to do is I want you to think about what is the most memorable event experience you've ever had. So think about, it could be at a meeting, it could be at some other kind of an event, could be at a personal event, professional event, whatever. But I want you to think about what was that memorable event, and then just kind of type in there a little bit about what is that? What was that for you? And let's start thinking about what really does create those great memories and that great engagement.
Well, I can add something here that I know as the organizer of the summit and seeing the responses from the attendees. They loved an exercise that we did with Sharon where everyone in the room became a musical instrument, and in the end we were a symphony. It was just so well done, had everybody pumped up. It was after lunch, and it just brought the energy right back up in the room. So that was a lot of fun.
That's one of my most favorite programs. It's so much fun and it's so impactful. So, all right. So while you guys are thinking, I know sometimes it's hard to come up with those right off the top of your head, but while you're thinking, as you come up with things, if you just continue to share them, that would be great.
I do have a great one for you that I don't have the name of person, but I've never seen anything like that. Someone had a giant dive tank in the meeting, and people got to try scuba diving.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Oh, here's more of an incentive. Did a dinner at the Tower of London. Okay, outside on the beach with food and games. So yeah, they're creating an experience that stands out.
Perfect. Yeah, some of that's location based and being someplace new and fresh and an adventure that they haven't been to before. I would assume that's probably on the beach. It brings back some memories. It's about childhood fun and just kind of, letting your hair down, getting your feet in the sand and having a good time, doing that. So let's jump in here a little bit and talk about how we truly create those experiences. And for those of you that have seen this before, I'm just going to buzz through it really quickly. The Experience Economy is a book that was written by Jim Gilmore and Joe Pine, and it was probably written about 10 years ago. And it talks about the history of kind of what we were willing to pay money for. And so I'm going to use the example of a birthday party so you can kind of see very quickly how things have changed. So originally, if there was going to be a birthday cake, then we would go out and our grandmother would make it, and we'd have the flour and the raw ingredients and the water and the baking soda, and we would basically put all those commodities, all those raw ingredients together to make a birthday cake. Well, then we started to have a little bit more money. We started to have a little bit more time in our world. So then we went from a commodity-based society to a goods-based. So instead of grandma cooking it, what happened? Yeah, exactly. Betty Crocker. We went to the store and we bought a box of Betty Crocker. Saved us time, saved us energy. We didn't have to put all those raw ingredients together, and we baked our cake. Then as we continue to move up on the line, we're continuing to have a little bit more money to spend again, and a little bit less time in our world. Things are getting busier. So then services came in. And in that instance, we would call Publix and say, or our local grocery store, and say, hey, I need a cake. I need it to say happy birthday, Susie, on the top. She likes bicycles, so put a bike on the top. And we were willing to pay somebody to actually bake the cake for us. So from there, we kind of moved into a service economy where we were willing to hire people to do things for us. Now we're moving into this experience society. And in the experience society, it's ramping it up a notch. We're no longer paying for the birthday cake. What are we doing? We're paying to go to Chuck E. Cheese and have an entire party experience put together for us at Chuck E. Cheese. So we're moving into an era, and are actually in the thick and almost on the verge of moving out of this area, where people are desiring experiences. For the first time ever, about 3 years ago, at the holiday time frame, people spent more money buying experiences as gifts than buying any kind of goods or services. So we were buying things like, massages and bicycle trips and all different kinds of things like that. Now we're very quickly moving into the transformation era, the transformation economy, where people don't want to pay just for the experience. They want to pay for some kind of transformation to happen to them. So an example might be, we're a member of a club, and we go and we have a great experience working out with the personal trainer who's totally into fitness and boxing, and he teaches us all these great things, and we have a wonderful experience there and get to participate. The next era will be, now we're willing to pay for transforming us. So we're not just going to pay for the experience of working out, we're going to pay for the results we get. So we're going to start quickly moving into an era of, how are we transforming people? How are we giving them something, instead of just a participatory experience, how are we changing their world, rocking their life, and doing something a little bit different? So very quickly, that's just kind of a movement of, you can see why things are changing in the meetings in hospitality industry, and how we're kind of moving up that experience rung. And you can see as you move up, the better you do at providing those particular things, the higher your competitive position moves on the scale, and the more relevance you have for your customer, and the more money they're willing to pay. So the quicker you can get out of just providing a commodity or a good and move up into experiences, the better off you'll be. So what we're going to talk about now is a little bit about designing experience. So in your mind, if you would just go ahead and type in, what is the most important thing to remember when you're designing engaging experiences? Out of everything there is to think about, what's the most important thing to remember?
And I will read these to you. These are coming right to me.
Great.
Yeah. Actually, I'm getting a lot of more great ideas for experiences. Do you want to hear a couple of
Yeah,
those?
sure. Let's go ahead and look at those real fast.
I'll read a couple more of those and then I'll read you some advice. How's that?
Perfect.
Um, one was to have a vocalist with an amazing, a strong, inspiring voice, and the room was dark, and they couldn't see her, but they walked in the room and they knew that, there was someone there, and it was just such a different way to start a session. I mean, I think a lot of these are about um, changing up the way you do what you
Yeah.
normally do. Can
Yeah,
create.
totally flipping what we normally do. And that one has a lot to do with a sensory experience, right? Because, you take away one of your senses,
Right.
no matter which one it is, and it totally changes up the experience for you. And doing something in the dark where all your other senses become heightened is really, really impactful.
Now, we had another musical idea, and I've seen song division around the industry, but someone mentioned they actually did a recording session. So that was sensory, but that was also memorable in that, how many people get to do that kind of thing.
Yep. Something unique, different, fresh that they haven't got to experience. One of the great things.
This is interesting and so easy. Everyone had to pass their phone to the next person and look at the first picture on there. What a great fun.
That's fun. I haven't heard that one before. I've heard a lot of things with cell phones, but I haven't heard that one. I love that.
Yeah. Funny, we're getting a lot of music. We're getting
Yeah.
Phil Vassar, an hour-long private conference in Nashville. So for music, it touches people and they tend to remember it, I think.
Yeah, music is the one thing that has the ability to transport you to a certain place and time. All of us have a song in our heads that every time we hear that, every time it comes on the radio, you immediately go back to that place where you first heard that song. And whether that song is something contemporary, your favorite James Taylor song that you heard at your very first live concert ever, or whether it's a drum corps and a marching bugle thing. Music has the ability to set the stage for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. It is very, very powerful. And one of those things that I think we don't always recognize how we can take advantage of that when we're actually trying to design an experience and incorporating it in. So for me, the most important thing to always remember is, who is my audience? Who am I designing for? And am I putting together the right experiences for them? A lot of times I think we get so wrapped up in what's the next, and I call it the flavor of the month. What's the flavor of the month? What's the thing that everybody else is doing? And we don't always think about whether that would be the best thing for our audience or whether there's something else that might be better. So part of it is really thinking about, who is that audience? Who are we designing for? And how do we do that? So a couple of things I want you to keep in mind as we go through this today. One is that engaging experiences don't have to be over the top and expensive. Some of them are the most simple things you can do and cost zero. It's just about paying attention to the little things. So that's one key principle. The second one is, it needs to be authentic and true to your brand. If you try to do something and take an idea that worked for somebody else and don't understand your audience and the real inner workings of that idea, it may or may not work for you. So you always want to remember, what is our brand, who is our audience, and then how do we stay true to that, and how do we create something that it's not copyable by anybody else. And then 3 is going to be a whole blend of techniques. Some of the things I'm going to share with you fall into more than one category. So you'll kind of get to experience those and see that. So let's talk about some. I'm sorry, Barbara.
People actually had a couple of other points that they felt were important in addition to those. The mission
Great.
meeting, that whatever you're doing has to tie into what the mission objectives of the meeting are.
Yes.
And the other one
Critical, critical.
was
What's your purpose? Why are you doing it?
the attendees' needs and wants, which I thought was interesting.
Yep. All about your audience. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
All right, so let's talk a little bit, keep those coming, Barbara. Let's talk a little bit about some things to think about when you're designing experiences. And I am, in my real world, I am what I call an idea stealer. So what I love to do is keep a curious mind and look at what people are doing outside of our industry, and then try to find ways to incorporate those into our industry and try to figure out, how do I take that, the concept or the essence of what they're doing, and blend it into our world. So throughout the day today, I'm going to share some things that are both things outside of our industry that create an impact and do something really fun and interesting that you can leap from. You can come up with something that kind of fits your audience, your event, your hotel or your venue, whichever it is that you're working at. So one of the great things, or one of the key things about having an engaging experience is, think about, what is the signature moment? What is the key thing that is distinctive and makes our event really, really memorable? If you think about concert experiences, how is your concert experience a little bit different and a little bit more distinct and a little bit more personal than some of the other concert experiences? So what is that signature moment? If you're thinking through the whole, if you're using the, the design model and you're thinking through your whole event, where is that signature moment and what is that for people? And is there more than one? Is there maybe one at the start and one at the end? So some examples of things for you that I think are kind of signature moments. I'm sure probably everybody's been to Pike's Fish Market or has probably heard about it. They're the creators of the fish philosophy. But for me, this just exemplifies so perfectly a signature moment. You're in a great big market and you're looking at carrots and you're looking at flowers and you're looking at breads. And then you come to the fish market, this slimy, smelly, nobody really wants to hang out their place. And there's crowds and crowds of people hanging around just to watch people toss fish. So that's their signature moment, is grabbing people in and getting them involved. The Cerritos Library in California, they had trouble, which is a great problem to have. They had trouble getting people out at the end of the day. They didn't want to flash the lights like most people do. They didn't want to get on the intercom and say, okay, everybody, we're closing, hit the doors. So what they did was they took a nod from the Wizard of Oz, and they played Wizard of Oz music, and then they showed on the video screens around the library the scene where Dorothy is clicking her feet together going, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home. And that was their signature. It's time to go now. There's no place like home. So how do you end your programs with a cool and unique kind of a signature moment? And then Sony PlayStation, when they did their launch of their great big PlayStation, they worked with the hotel to create a signature food and beverage dish. But in addition to that, they had a great big competition where they brought in key names and key players in the PlayStation model, and then they brought in celebrities to play against them. So that was their moment of distinction. Everybody kind of knew, the original PlayStation, and that was their moment to get their audience engaged and to create kind of that signature moment. So the next thing is, think about surprise, 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 surprise. What is unexpected, possibly unplanned, sometimes unscripted? How do you create that element of, wow, I didn't expect that to happen like that? Because when you can create that element of surprise, it wakes people up, it shakes them up, and it also becomes buzzworthy. It becomes one of those things that people talk about. So some examples, and again, it could be something really big and very expensive, or it could be something very, very simple. I'm going to share with you some really simple ideas that were that I think just kind of exemplify what this is. Coca-Cola, I don't know if any of you guys were on this plane, but Coca-Cola decided that they were going to do a happiness plane when they first started working with the new airline. And the worst part of vacation is always what? getting on the plane to go home. So they created a whole interactive experience on the plane for people that were getting ready to go home. And they put magicians on the planes who walked up and down the aisles and did basically sleight of hand magic, something you'd never expect on an airplane. So it was definitely a smile maker for them, and a memory thing that they remembered that it was Coca-Cola that did that. Another unexpected thing, I don't know if you guys have been to Macaroni Grills, but basically they have an honor system for wine. So basically they put a big old jug of wine on your table and give you a glass, and they give you a crayon that you mark on the tablecloth with. And every time you drink a glass, you mark there, and they charge you for however many you walk. So they are not, or excuse me, however many you mark. So they're not actually counting, although you can pretty much know operationally behind the scenes, they know how many glasses come out of a bottle of wine, but they are doing it all on the honor system, and they just charge you for what you did. There's a Le Méridien Hotel. It's a art meets kind of a techie thing, and all of this staff wear these boutique custom-made bracelets that they get locally from local artists. And whenever anybody compliments their bracelets, they give it to them, so it becomes a takeaway for them. The next one is one of my favorites. I go to a conference every year, which is my most favorite conference ever. It's called Mind Camp, and it's a conference for people in any kind of walk of life that's in the creativity world and has to come up with new and fresh ideas. And I sent out a survey asking things like, when are you arriving, and are you coming in on the bus, are you driving, and basically just some technical things that they needed to know for the arrivals of folks. And at the bottom, they wrote anything else we should know. And so I, just kind of being a smart ass, right, I love dark chocolate. Has nothing to do with anything, just I thought it would make them smile. When I showed up at the registration desk, they had a dark chocolate bar for me. So obviously there was a person reading all of that and taking into consideration, how can they make my day? How can they truly surprise me? It cost them, what, $1 for a chocolate bar, and just somebody paying attention. And then another conference I went to, they basically had the doors closed. Everybody's waiting out in the foyer for general session. They open the doors and there's music playing, and it feels just like a normal general session, only when they walked in, there was no chairs anywhere to be found. It was a stand-up general session, lasted about 8 minutes, and then the walls parted and it became a great big interactive opening general session with sponsors doing interactive activities and things like that. So totally different. So for me, surprise in big ways and in really little ways is a great way to kind of engage your audience. Does anybody have any examples of times that they were surprised and something that was just totally unexpected at an event you went to, or maybe one you put on? If you do have one, go ahead and share with Barbara, and I'm going to keep moving, and then we're going to come back to that after this next topic. So go ahead and share those. So the next thing about engaging experiences is they are really inherently personal. They touch each person on a one-on-one basis. The chocolate bar is a perfect example of an inherently personal experience that was also a huge surprise and a big wow for me. So if you think about how do we make things personal, Starbucks is an obvious one. 16,000 ways to get a cup of coffee at a Starbucks. There's actually probably more than that now that they've added some more specialty drinks. I also had a hotel salesperson tell me that what they do is every time they have a group checking in, they call the assistant of the meeting planner, and they get information and, if possible, a picture of her children. And then when the planner checks in, they have a framed picture of their children waiting in the room next to the bed. So it brings home that little piece of home and that little personal touch, and the thing probably a lot of people miss the most when they're on the road for long periods of time is their family. So they've got that waiting there. PetSmart did a great big promotion where they created sand sculptures from pictures of pets of folks that had shopped there. So you could come in, you could enter online, you could send a picture of your dog or cat or bird or fish or whatever. And then they had a competition and they chose different ones, and then they created sand sculptures of those and then sent you pictures, and they brought it alive at an event, and they had all the actual sand sculptures at an event. So it was really personal. If having my pet in a sand sculpture would be really cool to me. So it's really about how do we make those things personal and really feel like it's being done on a one-on-one and just for me kind of basis, whether we have 20 people at our meeting or 20,000 people at our meeting. How can we look at and think about how do we touch each one individually?
I have a couple of answers from
I love perfect.
Are exactly that. One is as you walk into the general session, on the bottom of each chair there was a gift attached, which I think is very
that's cool,
welcoming, and you're special. And this one has to do with awards ceremonies. Basically, when the person's receiving an award, you use a school photo from when they were younger on the like that one.
Love that. Everybody knows who they are today. Shows something different. Love that.
Hey.
Any others you want to share, Barbara?
That's what I've got right now, but keep them coming. I'm reading, so I'll continue to share.
All right, so the next thing to consider, and kind of what I'm doing, if you guys haven't figured it out yet, is giving you some big, broad categories to sit down and think about and to brainstorm around when you're thinking about designing these experiences. And so I do have a chart and a worksheet that we use. So if you guys want it later, just email me. But these are the kind of the big, broad topics. So the next one is, engaging experience really create a sense of community. They make us feel like we're at a family reunion with a bunch of cousins that we've never met before. Okay, so we want to create that feeling of family. And I read some research not too long ago that said that if we can get everybody at our conference to meet 10 new people within the first 2 hours of the conference, they're 90% more likely to come back again because they've built a community, they've met some folks, and they more closely feel like they're in it and they're knitted in and they're a part of everything. And that all has to do with meeting people. So thinking about how do we create that sense of community? How do we get people to meet really quick up front? I love the example of sharing the photo on the iPhone. That is perfect for creating that sense of community, because when I look at your phone, I'm going to look at it and see where your picture is, and I'm not just going to sit there and be quiet. I'm going to talk to the people around me, or at least ask you, what's this a picture of? Who's that? Or whatever. So it makes it very personal. So it comes back to the previous point, but it also makes you feel like you are starting to really get to know people around you on a more personal kind of a level. I also saw another group that had everybody at the conference send in pictures of them doing what their favorite thing to do is. So if you were a skier or a fisherman or loved to read books or whatever it was, send in a picture. And then during the breaks and during walk-ins at the general session, that was just kind of a reel that they showed of people doing their favorite things. So it helped create that community, because you might not have known that Bob had once caught a 40-foot shark when he was out fishing. So it gives you conversation topics and a way to engage with people. Some other ideas that are kind of a little bit different is learning flash mobs. I've always been highly critical of big keynote speakers and spending lots and lots of money on a keynote speaker who has great ideas and thought-provoking topics that we might want to engage with a little bit more. Then the general session breaks, we go out for a 15-minute cup of coffee, and then we're into the next session, and we never really have a chance to engage about the conversations that keynote gave. So for one of our groups, we created learning flash mobs, and basically we did an hour-long break after the keynote, and then we had flip chart set up all around the space where people could write a topic that inspired them from the general session. And you could just walk around, pick a topic. You could commandeer a flip chart and basically do your own thing, start your own topic. And it became a really, really lively conversation about how are we going to put this into play? Did we agree with it? Did we not agree with it? What implications does it have for our business? And you can steer those conversations a little bit to make it real relevant, but it brought together the community based on the topic that they had just heard and made the money you spend on a keynote speaker a whole lot more wisely invested. The next idea is called a passeggiata. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but basically in Italy, it's the afternoon stroll. Everybody closes down their shops and everybody in the community brings their special, unique talents out onto the streets, and you just do a community stroll. So if I'm the baker, I might have fresh bread out on the table, or if I'm a magician, I might be doing sleight of hand, whatever that is. But basically the concept is, instead of hiring entertainment for, say, a cocktail party, you have a stroll. You take over the hotel grounds and then you invite folks from your group to host an activity. And the things that people come up with are absolutely amazing. Like, I was just at one, and one of the guys was a martial artist, and he was showing us how martial arts works and how you can use your strength of your mind and a simple position to ward off attackers, because that's what he did. So, the great thing about it is it's a really, really inexpensive way to engage people. It does take a little bit of coordination to get everybody to sign up and participate and have the things that they need. So you have to plan ahead. But it also creates that community because you're getting to know the real people and what they really do, as opposed to the normal cocktail party chatter. And if you're in an association, the normal stalker-stalky chatter, it kind of creates a whole different kind of community. At Mind Camp, the conference I was telling you about, we have kaleidoscopes, and that's a morning and an afternoon get together. That's a small conference. It's only about 250. And so they randomly assigned people to groups and had a facilitator with each group to help just start conversations. And you get together in the morning and talk about what sessions you're going to, what you hope to get out of it. And then we meet at 5 o'clock, everybody go grab a glass of wine, get back with your kaleidoscope group, and then talk about what you got out of the day, how you were feeling, what was good, what was bad. So it made a very, very personal kind of start and finish to the day. And if you were new to the conference, you immediately had like 6 or 8 people that became your group for the whole entire time, and you kept meeting back up with them, and you become instant friends with those folks. Just 2 quick more examples of community. Guerrilla gardening is a give back thing. And what that was basically, that was at 10 o'clock. We texted everybody at the conference and said, we're doing guerrilla gardening. Put on your old sneakers and your jeans and meet us in the lobby at 10:30 if you want to go. And then we had buses filled with tools and shovels and all kinds of things to be able to plant a garden somewhere. And so we went into a kind of a low income area that needed some sprucing up. They came in, they dug up all the weeds, they planted all these gardens kind of in the dark of the night. When people got up the next morning, they had these beautiful gardens in their medians and in their public spaces. So again, a purposeful event, a give back event at a different time with a different kind of an experience that really does create that community. And then the other idea here was the Midnight Refrigerator Raid, and Lowe's did this for their general guests during an Easter week. And basically, they kind of stole the idea from the cruise ship Midnight Buffet, only they had a refrigerator raid. Everybody went down into the kitchen, and the chefs were standing there, and they could look in the refrigerator and say, I want a salad, or I want some scrambled eggs. And the cooks and the chefs were all there, and they just it became this big community thing, like if you were at your grandma's house and you met some of your brothers and sisters down for, a refrigerator raid late night. So again, and just another way to kind of create a sense of community. So if you guys have some ideas and some ways that you've built community, I'd love to hear them. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep moving along here with this while we get those ideas in. So one of the big principles of creating an engaging experiences is entertainment. I think this is the one that meetings professionals do really, really well. We have so much awesome and new and great talent. The talent companies out there, the booking companies, and there's just so many great things out there from an entertainment standpoint. But entertainment is, what do we see? Okay, so it's what are we looking at and what are we seeing, and that's kind of that experience. So if you think about like Krispy Kreme and their glazed waterfall, instead of just going in and buying donuts, and we're creating an entertainment experience for that in the buying line. The cows and the lizards and the antelopes and the buffaloes and all that whole big thing that kind of happened, the whole Chicago cows. What are people seeing as they come to our city? How are we entertaining them and making something unique and fun for them? Marching bands, we talked a little bit about the power of music, and if you see a marching band, you're going to think something much different than if you're playing ABBA songs. So how are you setting the stage for what you're trying to do? Junkanoo down in the Bahamas, and that's really about local. What is local and what is unique? And I think we all do this really, really well. I think the entertainment part is fairly easy, and we do it really quickly and do it really well. So Barbara, any ideas on the sense of community?
Absolutely. I love this one, and I have seen this at MPI. Tia was saying she loves when trade shows have dogs to interact with. Puppy, I don't remember, puppy cuddling.
Puppy cuddling, the best invention ever. Isn't that great?
And it brings the people together who are standing there with the dogs. A lot of CSR activities, assembling food packets for children in Haiti. It turned into a bit of a competition between the different teams that were doing that. Everybody gets to know each other. It's a very warm, wonderful feeling when you do those kinds of things. I also love this one, school supplies. 200 of the association CEOs and board chairs put together backpacks with school supplies during their meetings. So seen a lot of those examples. I had a great example that I think builds excitement among the team without them necessarily interacting at the moment, but I'm sure gets them all talking afterwards. Beth mentioned when her company's stock price hit $70, the CEO had agreed he would get his head shaved. So they brought him on stage and they shaved his head. And then the COO, they had a film crew, and he had 70 shaved the number 70 on the back of his head. So they shaved everything but the 70. And
yeah. That's very cool.
Of course, I'm sure showed it back at headquarters, and that got people talking. After.
Yeah. I love that. I love it when CEOs get involved in it. We do a lot of team building programs, and a lot of times some of the C-suite is like, well, that's not really for us, that's for everybody else. And I don't think they have any idea how that disrupts some of that sense of community that you're trying to build as a company. Why wouldn't you participate and get to know people and all of that? So yeah, so I think that's definitely true. All right, so we're going to kind of just zip through some of these principles of engaging experience. The next one is aesthetics, and that's all about what do they feel? What is the atmosphere that you're trying to create? Are you trying to make them feel warm and comfortable and like they're at home, or do you want something stark and abrupt because you're making some kind of a big announcement that you need total attention for and you want them, a little on edge? So what are you trying to make them feel through your event? Starbucks obviously has a really definitive feel for their coffee shops that is different than a Starbucks, or different even than like a lot of just independent coffee shops. It has a different vibe that they're trying to create. the Sanibel Harbor Resort, which is down in South Florida, they hated having housekeeping carts in the hallway. So people had to juggle around them and they look ugly and there's dirty linen sitting all over them. And, you know, they're just big and bulky and just not very attractive. And it wasn't the feel they were trying to create for this really nice beach resort, relaxed kind of environment. So what they did is they took all of the things that would normally go on the cart and put them in individual baskets. And they got great big baskets and had all the clean towels and the sheets and the amenities and everything for each room. And they set them outside the door of the room. First thing in the morning, they'd come in, they'd set them outside the door of the room. Then when they were working in the room, they'd take them in and they'd come out, they'd have all the dirty stuff in it. They'd immediately carry it to the back of the house. So you never saw dirty linens or half-used soaps or any of that kind of thing. And it was a very serene and peaceful and relaxing and more spa-like kind of experience, which is that they were going for. And then the Masters Golf Tournament, you know, they, I don't know if any of you have been there, but everybody knows that, you know, green is the color of the Masters jacket. The thing that I found most interesting, the one time I got to go, was if you're watching on TV, I don't know if you noticed, but you never see a piece of trash anywhere on those grounds. It's very serene, very pristine, very clean, very kind of posh, high-end kind of a feel. And in my head, I always wondered, why do we never see any litter? You know, I watch it every year on TV. Why do we not see that? And then I went. The reason you don't see any litter is because they wrap all of their food and everything that they sell in green paper. And not that they have a trashy crowd that throws things on the ground. There's trash cans everywhere and people are very neat. But if things do land on the ground, you never see them on the cameras because they're green instead of white. So thinking about what kind of a look and a feel are we trying to create? And then what are all the little things we need to do to make that happen? Then the next piece is all about our senses. And it's about incorporating all of our 5 senses. This is another thing that I think as a meetings industry and as a hospitality industry, we do this really well. But you think about, you know, at the theaters, you smell popcorn. Grocery stores now have built-in fans and ventilation systems to pump out the fresh smells of cinnamon and fresh bread into the store so that you smell that from pretty much wherever you are, and you definitely want that. We talked a little bit about a military march feel, and you know, and that's, you know, that's your sense of hearing, and it makes you think one thing. For those of you old enough like me who remembers conjunction junction, what's your function? So it was all about creating those rhymes and those rhythms and what are you hearing to make you remember it. In the picture is an idea bar that we do in our playroom. And what we wanted to do was have a place where people could sit and talk and engage and think about fresh new ideas and have interesting conversations. And so we started going, well, where does that happen? It happens at the bar. So we created an idea bar instead of a cocktail bar. And anybody who wanted to could go be the idea tender. And we put geniuses and pros and people that had really interesting conversation topics to talk about back there as idea tenders, and just had great conversations all day long. So think about how are we incorporating all those senses and what are we doing for that? So what I'd like you to do right now is think about, obviously, the number one reason people come to our meetings is for, well, there's 2, right? Education and networking, flip-flop back and forth, but those are the top 2. So we think about what do we want the guests to learn? And what I want you to do is, in the bar, just for fun, I want you to write boom shakalaka, and then I want you to, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell us how well you think you do at making education engaging and interactive at your meeting. So you're going to write boom shakalaka just to wake up your brain and do something different. And then you're going to write 1 through 10 how well you think you do at this. And Barbara's just going to shout out some numbers for me as they're coming in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people describe their performance. Numbers, words. I got a boom shakalaka, but no description of
no ratings. All right. Okay. Well, let's just talk about this a little bit, because maybe maybe if we think about what interactive and fun education is. How do we do that? And then that'll give us some ideas on whether we think we're doing well or not. So
And so
this
I'm getting people are sevens and eights. One person said one. Well, I hope not after this session. Yeah, everybody
Yeah,
so far is a 7 or an 8. How interesting. One
yeah.
6.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. That is great that we're finally looking at education as kind of a priority in what we do. And it's interesting because that's the side of the world I play in, experiential learning and experiential education and team building and things like that. So I've always wondered why, if the top 2 reasons people come to conferences are to learn and to network, why we spend more money on food than we do on any of those things. And why don't we reallocate budgets a little bit to think about, if I took 10% out of my food budget and we just didn't have dessert one day, what would that do for my budget to allow me to do something a little bit more interactive and a little bit more relevant on the learning side. So let's talk a little bit about some examples of some learning things and some different ways that's happened. So Camp Jeep, I don't know if you guys are familiar. This Camp Jeep started many, many years ago, and now it's become kind of the go-to way to teach in the form of users conferences. So Camp Jeep is a user conference that's all held in the great outdoors. People are camping, some are staying in hotels. It's all about learning how to use your Jeep and experiencing Jeep ownership and the Jeep lifestyle and the Jeep love with other people. And it had all kinds of hands-on and interactive activities. They had everybody from, here's how you winch yourself out of a ditch when you get stuck, all the way through some higher learning things. And then there was even a kids Jeep area where they got to drive the Fisher Price little mini Jeeps around a little rugged course and, start them very early on becoming a Jeep owner. So their whole goal was to create a lifestyle that taught Jeep owners how to use their Jeeps, because if they knew how to drive their Jeeps, not if they did, but if they knew how to, they were 78% more likely to buy another Jeep. So it was all about creating long-term buyers and long-term customers of the Jeep brand. So it was, this one's also about community. How do we create a Jeep community and get people involved with their Jeep so that they want another one? Tutu Tangos, which I don't know where else they are. I know there's one here in Orlando, but it got decided to do something a little bit different with their drink menu. And instead of writing a drink menu, they put it on Viewmasters. And I don't know if you guys remember, there were the glasses that you click the thing and the little wheel goes around and it changes the picture. So they put it on that. They saw drink sales rise 64% when they used the Viewmaster versus writing it on a printed menu thing, because people just thought it was so fun to learn about the drinks and to order a different kind of a drink. Experience excursions are one of the hottest new things in learning now, and that's about taking your learning on the road and giving people an experience around whatever it is you want them to learn. So as an example, we worked with a financial services company who put together a brand new board of directors. They wanted to learn, I'm sorry, not a board of directors, an advisory board. They wanted to learn what's important to the advisory board. We did some research, and basically we created an experience excursion where we went to 8 different places in Orlando that provided really unique customer experiences. And they went, met people that worked there, got to talk to folks, learned what they were doing, all outside of their industry. So they're talking to the folks at Hard Rock about how do we create a unique culture for our employees. And they were talking to folks at a parking lot, at the airport parking lot, about the services that they were providing and why they were more expensive, but they were full every single night. So it was all about going out and benchmarking from other companies outside your industry and outside what you do, and then bringing it home and relating it to what you do. So experience excursions are really, really big right now. And I think everybody's probably played with World Cafes, and really it's about how do we get how do we get our attendees to share the knowledge they have? It ties into adult learning theory about it's all about what's in it for me, and I am an adult now. I don't need to listen to the teacher tell me anything. I want to share, I want to learn, I want to talk, I want to have conversations, I want to benchmark with other people, I want to brainstorm with other people, and World Cafe is a tool to be able to do that. And then the next one is all about escape and how do we immerse the guests in what we want them to do. I'm just going to highlight a few of these. One of them would be learning games. So how do we immerse the guest into what we want them to learn? This particular game was a game designed for Invencis. They did a leadership training program that was all about ingraining their corporate culture into their into the new leadership trainees that they had brought in. And at the end, they said, we need to know whether they got it. Do they understand what our culture is, and do they live and breathe our corporate culture? So we immersed them in a custom designed game that was designed to let them play what they thought was just a fun game, and in reality was an opportunity to watch and see, did they play by the inherent and core learnings and culture of that company? So how do we immerse guests? How do we get them to do the things we want them to do? And then how do we do things like that are just a little bit different? Like, I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Rose Parade out in Pasadena, but they have a program where you can go behind the scenes and you can actually work on the floats and volunteer and build the floats. An entirely different experience than watching the floats come by is actually getting in there and gluing 100,000 little pieces of corn on the outside of a seahorse to make the seahorse yellow. So, so how do you immerse them? How do you take it just a little bit deeper rather than watching, can we do it? Universal has a program where you can sign up to ride the parades in their Mardi Gras program, and you can actually be the ones on the floats throwing beads and throwing moon pies as opposed to being the ones in the street catching. Both fun experiences, one just a little bit more immersive than the other. So how do we think about getting people immersed in those things? And then I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So, so I'm going to kind of buzz through this. This piece is all about work as theater and about how do we design experiences where we as the planners and as the salespeople and how do we get our teams involved in what's actually happening in the experience for the guests. And, you know, some examples like Dick's Last Resort. I know probably a bunch of you have been there, and there's some takeoffs now where you go into the restaurant and they treat you mean and they drop things on you and they don't let you have napkins, and if you ask for things they get mad. And so that's the whole ambiance of it, and it set them apart in the restaurant world because the employees were actually actors. You know, they were involved, they were engaged, they got to have fun with the guests, and they got to do that. Disney has a Take 5 program where every employee, no matter what you do, whether you're out sweeping the streets and picking up garbage or making beds or ringing up cash registers, or you're the supervisor in an office someplace, every day you had to take 5 and do something nice for either a customer or for a fellow employee. And so it became this really unique culture that they had of everybody doing something nice for everybody else. And then the stakes just kept going up, you know, and they shared what they had done and people shared experiences that had happened to them. And it just kept growing and growing and becoming this really unique behind the scenes thing that no guests knew they were doing it, but they were doing it. So it was kind of cool. And you guys, of course, know the story of the Geek Squad and how they got started, you know, being total geeks. And computer repair. All of their people wore black glasses with tape around the, you know, around the nose piece, and high-waisted black pants. And so how do we get our employees and the folks that are serving us and the folks that are working with us involved in the action? Because not only is it more fun for your guests, but it's also more fun for them. You know, they're, you know, as a pick any job, wait staff, you know, their job can be pretty much the same day in and day out. Well, if you're doing a Western party and you say, I want all the staff to wear blue jeans and boots, instead of their uniforms, that's an awesomely cool thing for them. So don't hesitate, in meal functions and things like that, to see, just think about, how do we get the employees involved? How do we get them engaged so that they're part of the theming, or they're part of the whole atmosphere and the experience that we're trying to create. And then the last little piece is about memorabilia. And takeaways, I think, are becoming less and less important. As I shared before, as we move up that rung and the experience ladder, now people really value experiences way more than they value stuff. So if you are doing takeaways and you are giving away things, how do you make that part of the experience? So maybe you're doing a tour where you're going to a glass blowing museum, and then that night the takeaway was a bottle stopper from the museum that comes in your bottle of water. Or House of Blues Hotels gives away CD jazz things. When you check out, they hand you like a 5-song jazz CD when you leave. So that's probably going by the wayside quick, because nobody uses them anymore. But how do you do that, and how do you create takeaways that people really want and that tie into the entire experience that you're trying to create? So we were going to do a stand-up fun thing. We're going to skip that. And then just the last piece is, what will people talk about forever and ever and ever? What are you doing to create that buzz, to create that chatter, to create that, that one thing that everybody talks about? Like, I had a friend that just went and bought a new car. When he traded in his old car, they went in and they looked to see what preset radio buttons did he have in his car, preset radio stations did they have. Then when he bought his new car, they had preset it to all of those things. Little thing, cost nothing, huge buzz. He talked about that for months, about anytime anybody talked about a car. We had at an MPI conference one time, we were trying to find a sponsorship for a party that didn't have any money. So we created a mystery hug thing, and he was the mystery hugger, and everybody had to find him. And when they did, they got entered for a prize. So, and today, and that was in 2012. So 7 years later, you can still ask people about that, and they can tell you who the sponsor was. It was $500 sponsorship, the best money he ever spent. So what are you doing? What are you thinking about that creates buzz and allows people to keep on talking about it? And again, sometimes it's that big act. It's surprise, Lady Gaga's performing tonight, and everybody's talking about how cool it was to see Lady Gaga. And sometimes it's, we went to this burger joint, and you'll never guess what they did. When we got to the counter, they whipped out a deck of cards. I drew the Joker, and so I got a free burger. So what are those little things that keep people talking and thinking about your thing? So the last piece I want to do very quickly is, I want you to think about, if you could be better at one of these three things, which one would you want to be better at? Would you want to be a better lover? Would you rather be a better cook? Or would you rather be a better golfer? And then just go ahead and type that in the chat bar. Would you rather be a better lover, a golfer, or a cook? Pick one of those three.
While they're typing that in, why don't you give us a minute about the Playroom at IMAX? Because
sure. Yeah, I would love to. For those of you that haven't been there, we host a great big interactive playroom. It's all day on Smart Monday, and we've got sessions throughout the whole entire day. And then we're on the show floor at the Inspiration Hub doing interactive education throughout the whole thing. New this year is we have a planner-only sessions in the playroom on Smart Monday on Monday morning. There's two kind of back-to-back sessions, and those are really going to be focused on not so much idea generating for making meetings more engaging, but overcoming obstacles. So how do you get boss buy-in? How do you overcome the fear of worrying that your attendees aren't going to like it? How do you look at some of those challenges? And then we're going to have big conversations with everybody else in the room. It's really going to be a World Cafe kind of a style, but it's really going to be all about how do we together as a group come up with solutions for some of those things.
That's great. I will tell you, we've got about 60% cooks, chefs, 20% lovers, and 20% golfers.
Oh, cool. That's a little different than normally. So let me ask you, what do all of these have in common with what we've just been talking about? And because we only have 30 seconds left, I'm going to just share with you the answer. The answer is you can read books about this stuff. You can watch videos. You can listen in on webinars. You can talk to people and get ideas. You can go to conferences and learn everything about any of these three things, as well as engaging experiences. But what you have to do in order to get any better at it is you have to act. You have to do something. Do something, golf, you got to go practice. Cook, you got to get in the kitchen and make something. Lovers, well, we know what that is. So you have to do something. So what I'd encourage you is to pick one thing that you've heard today and go out and act on that, put it into play and see how it works. And share your results with me. I'd love to hear about them.
I think what we'll do, Sharon, I'm sure there are people who want to stay on and ask questions. So why don't we add 10 minutes for that? But I would like for those who have to leave, we'll consider this the official ends. And our winner of the $100 gift card is Linda Haskins. Linda will be in touch right afterwards.
Woohoo! Yay, Linda!
For those of you who choose to stay, feel free to plug in your questions for Sharon, and we'll keep it going. I did have a question here as a meeting planner who's got a boss who just is not a fan of experiences. He thinks the attendees won't like them. How do you get through to someone who's always done things the same way?
Yeah, I think that when we're working with our clients, that's the number one obstacle out there in the world. So I've been asking a lot of my clients that are doing things, how are they overcoming that and what are they doing? And some of the things that they've shared are, one, they're starting small. They're not like immediately trying to revamp their whole conference and do these great big huge experience things. They're starting small and they're doing some kind of experimental things to get buy-in from the attendees and to show how it really does work and how people do want it. So like, for instance, I work with a financial services company and their boss is the same way. We're advisors, we're stuffy, nobody wants to play, they just want to hear the speaker speak and all of that. Well, so what we did was we had table topics for one part of the session, and it was an optional thing. So people could either come to table topics and have conversations, or they could go and listen to a speaker. And like 70% of the people came to the table topics. They didn't want to listen to a speaker anymore. So we just kind of started building small and with non-threatening things. You want to be really careful you're not doing anything too silly or too anything that's going to make people look embarrassed or look bad or anything like that. And you want to start off with things that you're going to have a high degree of success and will work. I had another planner tell me that she put together an entire report on results and on science. So she went out to the science community and said, here's what we're learning. Here's what we know about how people learn. You can only sit still for 10 minutes. You can only do this. You can only do that. And we're not making good use of anything that the experts and the scientists are saying now that we're learning all of this stuff. So can we try it? And again, start small, start doing something, in a kind of an unthreatening and incognito way. And then sometimes you just, I had another planner said, I just did it and I knew it was going to work and I didn't ask permission. I figure I'll just beg forgiveness if it doesn't. And that's exactly what happened. And it worked great. And the CEO afterwards said, wow, I didn't really think that would work, but it did. And good job. So, get them on board in small doses.
Right. Feel free to ask questions. We've got a few more minutes. We're going to go a little over. This is a little specific. Good question from Sherry. As a meeting planner, can you ask your venue to have their servers dress in your particular theme to create that experience?
I've always had good success with that. Like we did a thing for Diageo when they had just bought and acquired the whole Captain Morgan brand. So we did this like kind of fun hunt thing that was all about pirates and captains and all of that. And, you know, we said to the hotel, hey, would you mind if your staff wore just some, you know, some black pants and some fun white shirts, and we'll give them eye patches and bandanas and some things to dress them up in pirates, some crazy hats. And they were all for it. So I've never had anybody say no when we've asked if they would do things, as long as we were willing to absorb the expense of having them do it. You know, what I wouldn't expect the hotel to pay to outfit their staff, but you know, if it was accessories, they just wore, like in that instance, black pants and a white shirt, and then we accessorized, it worked fine. And I've also seen, I was also at an event one time where the entire staff was wearing branded merchandise from the company. So they all had on, it was an outdoor kind of a golf event. And they all had on golf shirts with the company name on it. So I'm assuming the company gave them those shirts, and they were wearing those. So I'd always ask, always.
Do you have any creative make your own food ideas as a team building activity?
Like, I'm not sure whether that means cooking or just anything, anything to do with food.
Decorate your own donut. So there were lots of sweets, toppings, and donuts, and people could do that. We've done make your own shakes. So people, rather than just picking up a smoothie, they get to get a little more creative, and then they all talk about the food and so forth. I think even family style meals is more creative and engaging for people than serving.
Yeah, family style is getting really hot right now. I'm starting to see a lot more of that, and I personally love it because it makes you talk to everybody else at the table and not just isolate with the person sitting next to you who you already know. So I love that. Yeah, I've seen a lot of things done with centerpieces where the centerpiece turns into some kind of an activity. So like one time it was a giant, it was kind of a giant clue game, and then all of the characters for Clue were based around, you know, it was like, you know, like Mr. Carrot, and there was a carrot, you know, a carrot die cutout thing in the center of the basket, and then there was some clues given throughout the dinner, and then that kind of became part of the centerpiece, kind of became part of the interactive activity. It wasn't really a cooking thing, but it was a meal kind of a thing. We've done garde-manger competitions where everybody got, you know, a cutting board and a knife, and they had to create some kind of an interesting sculpture or decoration or whatever. We did that one time, and they took all of the squash and the cucumbers and created a 6-pack of Corona bottles, which was really fun. So that's been done before. We've put total baskets of fruits and vegetables on the table, along with some wheels and connects pieces, and then we called it the Fresh Produce 500, and they had to build a race car using the fruits and vegetables at their table, and then we had a racetrack set up, and they came over and raced them. That's what's coming off the top of my head.
Well, I think we've tapped you enough. I think we're going to wrap it up with the race car. Linda Haskins, once again, will be back to you about your gift card as soon as we adjourn. But I just want to thank everyone for participating this afternoon. Sharon, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to work with you. And we'll see you in a week at IMEX.
I can't wait. Yeah, if you're not doing anything, stop by that planners only session. I'd love to have all you guys join us.
We will. I hope everyone will. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.